They called it the Great War, the war to end all wars. But behind those words lies a reality that defies comprehension, a 4-year descent into industrialized hell. Between 1914 and 1918, over 20 million people were killed. Entire generations vanished in mud, gas, and steel. Yet the truth most history books soften is this: World War I was not glorious. It was not noble. It was slaughter on a scale humanity had never seen. A machine built to grind flesh, bone, and soul into the dirt of Europe. Picture it: the Western Front, stretching from the North Sea to the Swiss border. A frozen, rotting scar across France and Belgium. Men lived and died in trenches carved into the earth like open graves. The stench was overwhelming: rotting corpses, unwashed bodies, sewage, and gunpowder. The soldiers called it the smell of death, and it clung to their uniforms, their skin, their memories. They stood in ankle-deep mud that could swallow a man whole. Rats the size of cats fed on the dead, sometimes gnawing at the living as they slept. Frostbite blackened toes. Lice bred in uniforms until men scratched themselves bloody. And above all, the constant thunder of artillery. Shells rained for days. The ground shook. The air filled with shrapnel, and men vanished into red mist before their comrades' eyes. World War I was the first truly modern war. It introduced death on an assembly line. Machine guns, capable of firing 600 rounds per minute, cut down charging soldiers like wheat. The Battle of the Somme alone saw 57,000 British casualties in a single day. Then came poison gas, chlorine, phosgene, and mustard. Soldiers screamed as their lungs filled with liquid, drowning in their own blood. Others clawed at their eyes, blinded and burning. Masks were issued too late, and even those who survived carried scars for life, inside and out. The generals called it strategy. The soldiers called it madness. But the untold truths go beyond the trenches. Behind the lines, colonial soldiers, from India, Africa, the Caribbean, and Southeast Asia, fought and died for empires that barely acknowledged their existence. Nearly 2 million colonial troops were sent to European fronts, many forced into labor battalions, digging trenches, hauling ammunition, or building roads in freezing rain without boots or proper clothing. Thousands never made it home. Women, too, faced unseen horrors. As men went to war, women took their places in factories, working with explosives that turned their skin yellow and their hair orange. They were nicknamed Canary Girls. When they fell ill or died, their deaths were written off as patriotic sacrifice, and across occupied territories, especially in Belgium and Eastern Europe, sexual violence became another weapon of war, rarely recorded, almost never punished. The physical wounds were visible, but the psychological carnage was just as devastating. The term shell shock emerged to describe what we now call post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. Men trembled uncontrollably, stammered, screamed in their sleep. Some were executed by their own armies for cowardice, when in truth their minds had simply shattered. In the hospitals, doctors tried electric shock therapy to cure them. They would strap men into chairs and send jolts through their bodies, demanding they stand, salute, or speak. It was torture disguised as medicine, and it happened thousands of times. By the end of 1918, the landscape of Europe was unrecognizable. Villages vanished, forests flattened, rivers ran red. 9 million soldiers dead, 21 million wounded, and an entire continent buried under grief. But the numbers don't tell the whole story. Think of a single soldier, 19 years old, from a small town in England, or France, or Prussia. He leaves home believing he's fighting for honor. He ends his life, face down in mud, lungs full of gas, letters from his mother soaked in blood. Multiply him by 10 million, and you begin to understand the scale of the nightmare. And after it all, after the armistice, the parades, the medals, the truth was buried. Governments glorified victory. Textbooks spoke of courage, not carnage. But the soldiers who came home knew the truth. They wrote it in their diaries. They painted it in nightmares. The poet Wilfred Owen called it the old lie. Dulce et decorum est pro patria mori. It is sweet and fitting to die for one's country. World War I was not sweet. It was not fitting. It was the death of innocence, the moment humanity realized it could destroy itself in the name of progress. And perhaps the most brutal truth of all, we forgot. We built bigger weapons.